When we think about our lives day in and day out, what does the power of calm really mean? I believe calm is more than a peaceful state of mind. It's the ability to return again and again to a place of clarity, presence, and gratitude, no matter what's happening around us. I'm your host, Enza Richards, and welcome to the Power of Calm. Today I'm delighted to welcome my friend and colleague, Tansi, whose work has deeply influenced the way I think about leadership, relationships, and living with greater calm and presence. Anna is the founder and president of Counterbalance Consulting and a certified internal family systems practitioner. For years, she's helped leaders and organizations grow while guiding people back to themselves in deeply meaningful ways. Together, we'll explore how calm shapes the way we lead, navigate change, and cultivate greater gratitude in our lives. Because calm isn't something we find outside ourselves. It's something we return to. Let's begin. Anna, I'm thrilled that we've come together to share the ongoing conversation you and I have been having for a long time. We've had many years of history together and apart. And when we first met, you were doing organizational work in our company. And I remember the very first interaction, I noticed something I hadn't experienced in the workplace quite in the same way. The way you listened, how you took in complexity, and then you translated that back with such crispness and clarity, and the quality of your presence that you brought into the room. It's something that I never forgot. And it informed me. I went back to that as I thought of what would I name my podcast? The Power of Calm. So it seems especially meaningful that we're reconnecting here. And I hope that listeners will take in just a small glimpse of wisdom, joy, and light through our conversations.
Thank you. Thank you for all of that. And by the way, I would say it takes one to know one. I think there was a reverberation or a alignment, some kind of energy that was vibrating, because it's how you present. And that's why I'm excited that you can bring this out and share this and share our conversation with other people. So thank you for pulling this together.
Thank you, Anna. You know, when I hear the power of calm, people might imagine something like a quiet mountaintop, meditation cushions, incense, a life that's always peaceful and serene, without problems. But that's not really what we're talking about. Calm isn't about the absence of difficulty. Calm is the ability to remain present while we're in it.
And that means regardless of the degree of complexity, people are juggling a lot. There's a lot of moving parts. So how do we stay present at the speed of daily life and complexity?
Yeah. I remember when I was in corporate for many years, that was a theme that I tried to incorporate. And I think that many folks struggle with is I'm working day to day. I need to be this person that that has to fit into this mold. And it's not just corporate. It's anywhere where we work and where we have to be present. So everyday life. And there's something to be said about being involved in the work, but not being consumed by it, right?
I like that. Yes, that's really well said. And it is a practice. And I appreciate that whatever we do, whatever it is, if people have practices that allow them to come back to their center, to be having that presence that you're describing, Enza, it is a practice. And it doesn't mean we can't still lose that presence and then come back. But that's the key to the kingdom, to be able to return back even when there is a distraction or something throws us off our game.
Yeah, I've noticed leaders that I really admired always had this ability to be calm. And I would watch carefully to see, well, how will they react when there's a big problem?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I noticed every time those that I admired had the ability to stay in that flow
Mhm.
and not be
Mhm.
rattled. And so I was always very interested. How do they do that? How do you not
Mm.
get rattled? It's easy to be consumed by all the problems, and then how are we going to look when there's a problem, and how are we going to fix it? And what I noticed time and time again with those that I aspired to be like, not that I ever accomplished it completely, but um, was when there was a problem, they would be able to concentrate on it, focus, take a step back,
Mm.
and then through that behavior, they were clear. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it makes a lot of sense. And I think what I'm hearing you say and what I often point to is the ability to go wide angle and maintain or return to a different perspective. Put things in perspective because I think things can get distorted and we can get myopic, telephoto, and we're so in it that we're missing the bigger picture. And I think in the face of challenging things at work or home in life, it is very easy to get so absorbed in something that's so small or important, certainly, but we've lost the bigger picture. And I hear you saying, how do I reset that perspective moment by moment if we can? Yeah.
And I've learned that there's a science behind it. When we're rattled, the heart beats faster.
Mm-hmm.
That's a science.
That's right.
And when the heart beats faster, our blood pressure goes up a bit. And it really does physically manifest. And
Mm-hmm.
when our heart is beating faster, it's harder to concentrate. I mean, we look at the athletes, we look at the Olympics, what an athlete needs to go through. And they have the ability to be in a flow. And
Mm.
my prior guest, Suresh, and I were talking about being in the flow, in the beingness, right? What does that mean? How do you
Mm-hmm.
be when you're in the middle of turmoil? And even where we are in our environment right now,
Mm.
politically, in our country, it rattles people. And I know
Yeah.
you're experiencing some of that too.
Well, when I think about the flow, everyone's watching the World Cup right now and enjoying seeing that. And it's fascinating to watch athletes. Like you wonder, what are they doing? And there is science behind it. And it's important to understand one of the few things that we can actually override in our autonomic nervous system is the breath. I think breath and blinking are the two that happen automatically without us having to think, but we can also think about them. And so if we can alter our breath, that is going to impact what happens in our nervous system. Our heart rate will change. We will be more present. So that's why I think that's the power that I think you're talking about. We can actually be more in control of how present and online that we are, even in the face of adversity.
When we can come back to the breath, I
Mm-hmm.
love that you brought that up. It is so powerful that it actually changes the way you react, the way
Yeah.
you think, because now you become clearer.
Mm-hmm.
We think of power, we think we gotta get the muscles going, right? Or yeah, it has to be something on the outside that
Mm-hmm.
is uh, more radical. I guess that's
Mm-hmm.
the word.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, calmness is not passive. It takes effort.
Mm-hmm. A colleague decades ago said to me, his practice was to learn how to touch his world gently, to approach his world gently. And he said, here, pick up that bottle. And so I picked up a water bottle. And he said, now pick it up gently. And I was like, ooh. And so I picked it up and I put it back down and I looked at him and he said, did you notice how much more intention and presence and focus it took when you touched it gently, as opposed to just picking it up? I never forgot that because I think that's so in
Wow.
keeping with what you've been talking about with calm and that you can actually override your heart rate and reduce it by the power of what you do with your breath and with calm.
Hmm. I mentioned earlier when we first met, I saw something that so intrigued me and I just felt seen. We use that
Hmm.
term now. Back then we didn't, but I felt like you really cared. You were doing development work, organizational development work,
Mm-hmm.
and you were doing trainings, and it was different though. It wasn't just like you were taking the slides and the the pieces of paper and reading from them and having us do exercises. There was more. So I'm curious, even with all the work you've been doing over the years, how do you tap into the power of calm? How's that informed you?
Hmm. It's a great question. And about three or four thoughts come in at the same time. What I will say for starters is one of my dear colleagues and mentors, Emmett, who's in his mid 80s, was coaching me on what to put on my website. It was probably 30 years ago, whenever we were just starting doing websites. And he said, "You know, the problem here, Anna, is that you care about your clients." I gave him kind of a terrier tilt, like, what other way is there to do it? He said, "No, you have to really get this. Like, you care about them more than making the money that you'll make because you were hired by them. And that's really hard to articulate on a website." So it sounds like it's a backhanded compliment. The truth is, I didn't actually know there was another way to do that. So that was an interesting journey of just like, what do I do with that coaching? That was an interesting awareness and a mirror. I think, though, that it plays into this because if you really do care and know that human beings want to be seen, heard, acknowledged, appreciated, respected, loved, the way you go about working with them will feel the way you're feeling, I think. And it's what you do as well. So I know that you understand that. So I do think I have several different practices. I think over time you do build a muscle. It is back to but there's a building a muscle memory, I think, that allows for greater capacity and net time that you are present to whatever you're doing. And I think there's a calm within that. And that's, I think, one of the things that our clients or our people who reported to us or worked on our projects, I think there was something about how they almost not almost, were co-regulating with us because of the practices that we had that allowed for that kind of calm.
When I think about caring about people, and how does that even relate to the power of calm? And you sort of alluded to it, that
Hmm.
it it's commingled.
Hmm.
And mindfulness, as a mindfulness teacher, one of the things that we learn and teach is keep coming back, caring about what you do and the people that you work with. And I believe many do. There is a correlation between behavior and just having that mindset. I love what you were talking about when you mentioned the water bottle. When you go about it real fast, and when you are rattled, instead you gently pick it up. There's a different energy, and I think one informs the other. Definitely, there's a connection. I've seen it with those that I admire, and I've seen it within my own life, that there is a connection. And so, what I would encourage folks is, when you are thinking about, how do I even start incorporating the power of a different way of being, maybe a flow, a
Hmm.
calmness, it doesn't happen immediately. It's something that we practice.
Yeah.
And the more and more we practice, no longer is it an effort. It becomes part of you, but it is a practice nonetheless, right? What do you
Yes.
think about that?
I would agree. And it can feel intermittent at times. I was
Mm.
calm, present for a while in that meeting, and then where did I go? And I know that I can do that if my system can take me out, and then I suddenly feel like I'm back. I'm back behind my eyeballs, sitting with people, but for a while I wasn't really completely present. And what you always say, and I love quoting you with this, you may have already said it today, that calm isn't something that we manufacture, it's something that we return to. I love that you say that. It's not, and you can see people like maybe trying to be calm, but they've had their coffee and they're gritting their teeth and it doesn't feel calm and present. There really is something very much more at home than that feeling. So I appreciate that. I quote you regularly because that really captures a lot of what you're saying.
It isn't on the outside. It's not like we can make everything else around us calm. Well, that helps. It does help. If you've had a particularly
Mm-hmm.
crazy day, it does help to take a walk or to, take a warm bath or something that calms you. It does help. But at the end of the day, it really is what's inside of you. It's already there. The problem is that we don't tap into it often enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if there's any message that I'd like to leave with today, it's that trust in yourself to come back. Keep coming back. Keep coming back. Remind yourself, keep coming back. And there are practices that we can employ to do that. And I know with internal family systems, that's part of what is the core of that message too, in that you keep coming back to the self, which is the core,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, that's right. And self is somewhat of a universal term, because it's that innate inner wisdom. We all are born with, whether we know it or not, there is some pureness and some essence there. And some people have complex trauma, so I'm not going to minimize. Not everyone has pure, calm, in the spirit of nature, nurture. I do
Sure.
respect that very deeply.
Mm.
To be able to know what that innate inner wisdom is, that essence, that higher self, whatever it is we call within us, we know when we're there and we know when we're not there. And the ability to have, the Viktor Frankl quote, that space between stimulus and response, to be able to have even a picosecond between something happens, somebody says something, and what you do as a result. Just being able to get that space and decide in that moment what your choices are, which happens pretty quickly. That's a practice. And that's where IFS, internal family systems, has helped me so much. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember being in a conference room and talking to my staff and the concepts of the 8 C's, which part of that is calmness, part of that is clarity, creativity, and you probably can name the rest of them.
Uh-huh. You got them.
And
Compassion, connected, curiosity, creativity, all of those. Yeah.
yeah, curiosity was a big one. And when you think about curiosity, being curious about yourself too. And you were kind of alluding to it and you said there's that little window. How do you react? What do you do in that moment? And if
Yeah.
you really stay in your head, well, that doesn't work because now you're in your head and you're probably not going to do very well. But being curious about, well, what is that intention of what that person is saying, or being curious about a situation, but really being curious kind of
Yeah.
takes you out of yourself,
It does.
and it just has you be present. And that's a
Yeah.
big part of coming back to the flow, is being present. And I just had this image of an athlete again, watching the Olympics this year. It was fantastic. And you see it, their whole being is present. They are
That's true.
nowhere else. They are
That's right.
right there.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get into that flow, they have to be right there. They can't be
Mm-hmm.
anywhere else. And when we're curious about what someone's saying and we listen intently, it helps us to respond if we're just there and not thinking about, well, what's this doing to me? Why are they saying that? Or oh no, does this mean this is going to happen?
Hmm.
All these things that run through your, instead of just, what are they saying? Let me pay attention. Right? Yeah. Talk to me more about that, because you do a lot of this work.
Well, I love that you're underscoring, double clicking on curiosity. I always think about when I was growing up, I was taught, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And
Mm.
I've learned that I don't actually subscribe to that any longer. It's not what you say or how you say it as much as where it comes from. And that has served me really well because that gets to your point, which is intention. So if there's a part of me that wants to make you feel bad or put you in your place or make sure I cut you down to size or whatever my motive is, that's not going to come from that centered, grounded, calm essence or self that we've been talking about. That's going to be, I'm going to win, you're going to lose. I'm going to come out smelling like a rose and you're not. So knowing that, like, whoa, okay. But even with curiosity, I have found this mischief in that term because I call it my curious cat part. If I can ask you just because I'm curious, and if curiosity comes from I am open, I don't pretend to know the answer because I'm not you. So when I ask with curiosity, I'm asking like I don't know and listening like I don't truly know. That's a different kind of listening, which is what you said out of the gate. How we listen, if it comes from the I'm listening for the dirt, I'm just using that as an example, as opposed to I'm really listening out of a self-led, a pure essence of curiosity. Those two things are very, very different. So I like to play with that term. As innocent as it sounds, curiosity takes different forms. If it's coming from X versus Y, it's going to have a different energy and it's going to elicit different responses from people. So that's
Wow.
just what got me thinking when you mentioned curiosity.
That's fantastic. We could take that for the rest of this talk and just go from there, because
Mhm.
just so much came up as you were saying that.
Mhm. Mhm.
You and I had a conversation many years ago, and we were talking about my own career. We were taking a hike, and you stopped and looked at me and said, well, but why can't you do that? And it stopped me in my tracks, because I knew you enough that you weren't trying to manipulate, or you didn't have any intent. You really were curious. Well, why not? Like,
Mhm.
what's stopping you? Tell me what's stopping you, because I don't know. It was a very almost innocent, and that's where you're going. I think is that curiosity. The intent of the curiosity needs to be, well, because I really don't have all the answers. I really do want to understand better. And I
Mhm.
will tell you, by virtue of you doing that, it my head spun.
Mhm.
It stopped me,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it was so genuine, and it was really out of curiosity that it made me curious. Oh, well, I
Mhm.
never even thought to ask that question. You know, why not? Well, because I assumed, of course, I can't do that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Very interesting, Anna.
I love
Very
it.
interesting.
I remember the moment well. I remember exactly where we were. And I love when, and we all do that. We do that for one another and other people, that they can ask a really innocent kind of short question like that, but it kind of knocks you off your kind of conventional train of thought that you hop on each morning. And it's what we know, it's our collective wisdom, what we think we know and have answers and subscribe to our intentions and all that. And when someone asks a question, it can kind of knock you off in a positive way so that you stop and look and say, well, I don't know. I don't know. So I think it just makes me think about how many people subscribe to the train of thought that goes on in their head as if that's who they are. And that's part of the practice I think you and I have been talking about. There's thoughts all day, but we think that's who we are, as opposed to no, there's different aspects of our thought process, our inner operating system that has those thoughts. That's not who we are. And when you can come to that deeper, like, well, wait a minute, if I go there, something very different shows up. And that's where I know that informed your transition from the work you were doing in the business world to running your own business.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I've learned an awful lot in your presence.
Mm.
And when we bring it back to the practice, intention, practice, I would imagine some folks might be thinking, well, okay, that's all great. How do I actually do that? How
That's
do
what I
I
do too.
actually do that?
Yeah.
Um, there's so many lovely um, pieces of information and talks we can listen to, and they are very helpful. And I found a couple of nuggets. One, and I've talked about this in a different talk, is gratitude.
Mm.
That is a big one. And how do we start our day?
Mm.
How do we start our day? How do we bring it back to a place of calmness? I'll use that word.
Mm.
And I find when we can start our day with thank you,
Mm.
it changes the way we get out of bed.
Mhm. Lovely.
Literally, just
Hmm.
do you find that too?
Well, yeah, if you start with gratitude, grateful that your eyes are blinking, your lungs are breathing, just starting with some pretty core, it can be a game changer. Just thank you for the day. So, whatever you're thankful for, I think is where you're going. That's where I find I can shift my mind frame as opposed to, oh God, what do I have to get done today? And ratsa fratsa is a different kind of energy, I think.
Yeah. And for me anyway, it's forces me to just take a breath.
Mm.
Prior to putting my feet on the floor, having the words come out as thank you, grateful that
Mm.
I've opened my eyes. And I want to be careful here because many people are not in a position where it's easy to be grateful. You know,
Mm.
that there's a lot of things going on in their lives. And by the way, there's a lot of things going on in our world right now that make it difficult for us to have that innate gratitude because, oh, but, this, and that's going on. And some things are very serious.
Mhm.
So when I refer to gratefulness in this way, anyway,
Mhm.
there's something deeper
Mm.
and it's hard to describe. But by conditioning myself to have the gratitude to be able to open my eyes or to be able to take that breath, um, and anything else I can think of just to be able to be as a human.
Yeah.
We're so blessed, lucky to be human
Mm.
because we have consciousness. So we get to decide, we get to make decisions.
That's right.
We have the intellect to do that. Whereas a plant or a creature, even an intelligent creature, they don't have that consciousness the same
Mm.
as a human.
Mhm.
So right there, I'm grateful that I have the ability to think and to um, make decisions.
And I would connect that to something again that you say often, Enza. Mindfulness teaches us to notice rather than becoming consumed by our thoughts. And instead of hopping on the train of thought, and I find if I can come to the grateful heart, all of a sudden it shifts things so quickly for me. I don't get consumed in what I'm thinking. It brings me back to that presence, that calm that you've been talking about. So, is that a practical hip pocket tool? Well, yeah, it is. I have to go back to wide angle. Look at how fortunate I am, even though not everything is, a bowl of cherries for me or other people, especially in the world we're living. So I think, can I stay in that mindfulness, that calm, and notice what's going on as opposed to getting caught up in, because then the thoughts will churn up our nervous system and then we're back to what we talked about earlier.
There is a lot to be said about the coming back to, and being a practitioner, I can say 100% it's not about a quick fix,
Mm-hmm.
and it is about a decision to do things maybe a little differently. And that doesn't mean that we're not active and spunky and fast. And it actually means quite the opposite. It means you actually can do things more productively, more efficiently. It's almost ironic, right? Well, how can you, and that's why the power of calm, how can you be so active? Well, you're not calm, but no, you are. There's something inside that's
Mm-hmm.
still keeping you in the flow,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That's
And
right.
that's the practice we're talking about. Mm.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I think it's important to stay with where you are, which is, we call them the hip pocket tools. Like, so what about all this, Anna and Enza? You know, I know I mentioned to you recently that whole metaphor of a labyrinth. I think life is like a labyrinth. It's just not linear. We don't grow that way. We don't learn. It doesn't look like 1, 2, 3 or ABC, and that's how I'm going to grow. And then this is going to build on that. It's what I think our brains that crave certainty would like that, but I don't think it really works that way. I think it is more like walking a labyrinth. And I think sometimes we're closer to that center that you've been talking about. And other times we wander. We really do. Sometimes
Yeah.
we feel much farther away. And the path may look like we're wandering, yet I think, you know, it's bringing us home, yet we're still moving forward. So that may sound kind of circuitous, but I think it's important to understand. I just know there's times for me when I feel like I've wandered pretty far from my home, and then other times when I can feel so at home, and more so as life goes on and I wander the proverbial metaphoric labyrinth. So I feel like it might be useful if you want to talk a little bit about, like unpack just a little bit more about calm and how that might serve. Like how do I have some of what Enza's having?
Mm.
So.
All right. Well, in the middle of any activity, it's helpful to stop in your mind.
Mm,
I just did it.
yeah, you did.
It takes a second. It's an intentional way of being.
Mm,
You can be in the middle of a harried activity
mm,
or in the middle of a meeting or in the middle of doing some physical work. Doesn't really matter. You can take a second.
mm,
And you might argue, well, what's that going to do? Here's what it does is when you do it over and over, when you practice it, when you practice it and
mm.
practice it. Again, back to the athlete. Practice. That athlete did not get into the Olympics by just once in a while getting up early and doing their run. They gave up things to do that,
Yeah.
and they did it every day and for years for that moment to be
Mm,
in the Olympics, right? And they really made an intention.
yeah. That
And
is it.
that's what I'm talking about is that I offer a practice to folks um, about taking time in the morning and in the evening.
Mm,
Start with 1 minute. Start with 30 seconds if you don't have
mhm,
a minute.
mhm,
Use your phone timer. And in that time, be very intentional about just being still
mhm,
and watching your breath. And that's it. Just be intentional about it and then increase the time.
mhm.
And then over time, you can't believe it. You look back and say, whoa, I was only able to do 30 seconds. Now I can sit for 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's right.
But if you do it every day, and if you miss a day, okay, but come back the next day.
Mhm, mhm,
And while you're in the midst of activity, it is quite extraordinary how it changes how you show up. When we
hmm.
use that term a lot now.
Yes, we
And I do
do.
like it. How do we show up
Yes,
to others and to ourselves?
yeah, it's so well said. And I think within that practice, what I've learned to do is sprinkle a mini version of what you just said throughout the day. We just got back from a weekend, a holiday weekend with family of origin. I've known these siblings for decades, It's not always hunky-dory because we don't spend very much time together. And there's moments where the inner chatter gets a little loud. There's a cacophony going on in there. My inner critic's on overdrive. And what I want to say and what I choose to say is very different. I am going to say to myself, take a breath and pause and say, what's in the best interest of all right now? What's my best next move? What you're talking about, Enza, gives me more of an ability to notice, like right now, let's see. Okay. So I may come back to it later and I may say something. It'll come from here as opposed to just what I want to say, which is not going to be it's not going to contribute to the best, highest good. So again, it comes back to intention, which you said, the ability to pause, come back to more of a calm and presence and ask that question. All of that is a practice that I think comes from what you're talking about, or it's a first cousin to what you're talking about, maybe.
I know there's so much more that we can talk about and that we'll touch on in our future episodes together. All right. So that was a spoiler. This is the first of many to come. And Anna, it's just been delightful talking with you today.
Likewise.
As a friend, as a colleague, as someone who I greatly respect and admire, I thank you for taking the time and for being part of this journey. Anna continues to be a coach and work with IFS. To reach her, you can reach her at anna@counterbalance.org. Anna, any final thoughts for today?
Well, probably counterbalanceconsulting.org. It's a mouthful, but that's what it would be probably if you wanted to email. I think what I know you and I both subscribe to is the core theme that we are going to return to, which is calm is presence and it's not perfection. We're not always going to get this right. And there's different ways toward, coming to this source that we talk about, coming back to that center that we've been talking about. So I look forward to continuing the conversation that you and I have been having for a long time and bringing it out to others. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Anna. Be well.
Likewise.
Thank you for listening to The Power of Calm. Your presence here matters. If you felt a shift today, imagine what we'll uncover next. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. For more inspiration and to connect with me, visit envisionwithenza.com. Until next time, may you find clarity to see what matters, the confidence to trust yourself, and the calm to move forward with purpose.